This animation begins by showing a 12-year-old boy named Peter and his little sister, Anne, who are busy unpacking because they have just moved into a new house with their mother. In the new house, Peter is upset because he has to share a room with Anne, who is super active and imaginative, which sometimes annoys him. Despite this, Anne loves her big brother very much and always encourages Peter, who dreams of becoming an astronaut like their deceased father. In the backyard of Peter and Anne's new house, there is a sacred tree that is home to insects, including Zoomzaemon and his family, who live happily in the tree. The insects often hold parties for entertainment and to share happiness with other insects. Unfortunately, the insects' happiness and peace are disrupted when three men deliberately destroy their habitat by uprooting the sacred tree. Seeing his family and other insects scared, Zoomzaemon decides to fight back by going to the moon to seek help from Night Fairy. Using the reflection of the moonlight in a pond, Zoomzaemon manages to travel to the moon and meets Night Fairy to ask for help. Without wasting any time, Night Fairy descends to Earth with Zoomzaemon to confront the evil humans. With her powers, Night Fairy manages to send the troublemakers to the moon along with the sacred tree. Unfortunately, Zoomzaemon's wife and one of Zoomzaemon's arms are also thrown to the moon, leaving him to live alone without his wife. Sometime later, Zoomzaemon has aged, with gray hair on his head. Despite this, Zoomzaemon tells his insect friends about his belief in a prophecy that everything will return, including his wife and the sacred tree, as long as there are humans who love animals. The other insects, however, think the prophecy is just a bedtime story that will never come true. Switching to Peter, who is about to go to school, his mother asks him to take care of, and because they both attend the same school. Unfortunately, Peter is reluctant to do so, especially since his little sister is strange and often talks about nonsensical things, even once spitting on his shoes, claiming it would make Peter dance. Despite being annoyed by his mother's request, Peter has no choice but to follow her orders and go to school with Anne. On the way, Peter and Anne are suddenly confronted by bullies who often harass children passing through that area. Peter is quite scared as the bullies start picking on him, but Anne bravely defends and praises her big brother in front of the bullies. Disbelieving Anne's words, the bullies challenge Peter to torment an insect they have caught, and unexpectedly, the insect in the bully's jar is Zoomzaemon. After giving Peter a slingshot, the bullies place the jar as the target. Peter, not wanting to harm the insect, secretly decides to aim at a beehive in a tree instead. Because of this, the bees swarm out, chasing the bullies away from the tree, while Peter takes advantage of the chaos to grab and escape. Soon after everyone leaves, Zoomzaemon, still in the jar, realizes that the human from the prophecy has appeared and will soon help the insects reclaim their sacred tree. Meanwhile, Peter and Anne arrive at school, where he starts scolding and for causing them trouble with the bullies. Instead of listening to Peter, Anne excitedly tells him that she heard Zoomzaemon speaking from inside the jar. Frustrated, Peter dismisses her story as nonsense and wishes he could send Anne to the moon so she wouldn't bother him anymore. That night, in the midst of a heavy downpour, Zoomzaemon searches for Peter and Anne until he is suddenly struck by lightning, which brings him crashing down near Peter's house, where he meets Anne. Without wasting time, Zoomzaemon quickly tells Anne that he intends to take her and Peter to the moon. And, hearing this, becomes very excited and rushes to wake up Peter. She tells her brother that there is an insect inviting them to the moon to save the lives of the insects. Peter, thinking his sister is hallucinating, does not believe and chooses to go back to sleep, ignoring her persistent efforts to get him to go. When Peter refuses to wake up, Anne, with a heavy heart, decides to go to the moon with Zoomzaemon alone. Shortly after, Peter wakes up and is shocked to find and has left the room through the window. Without hesitation, Peter rushes out to find Anne. Arriving at the pond that reflects the moonlight, Peter sees Anne entering the pond and follows her. Unexpectedly, Peter is then lifted up to the sky, arriving at a cloudy place where he meets an old man named Sandman, who is responsible for guarding children's dreams on Earth. Seeing that Peter is not asleep, Sandman becomes annoyed and intends to sprinkle his magical sand on him, but Peter quickly explains that he has come to rescue his sister, who has gone to this place. After hearing Peter's explanation, Sandman decides not to sprinkle his magical sand and instead offers to help Peter find his little sister. Meanwhile, Anne and Zoomzaemon also land in the cloudy place, with his body growing larger. Realizing they are still far from the moon where his wife is, Zoom invites and to find a way to the moon. Moments later, they arrive in front of Shooting Star School, a place where little stars study. And, seeing the little stars, is delighted to meet them, especially since the little stars transform her appearance to resemble theirs. Amid the excitement, the sky above the school suddenly darkens, causing everyone to become confused. Peter and Sandman, seeing the strange black cloud from a distance, rush toward its location. Arriving at the Shooting Star School, they find the school burned to the ground and Anne's bag lying near the entrance steps. Spotting Zoom under the rubble, Peter and Sandman ask him what happened and the whereabouts of Anne and the missing little stars. Zoom then explains that all the girls were kidnapped by someone he didn't recognize because, being a coward, he pretended to be dead when the kidnapper arrived. Peter becomes more frustrated, knowing he has only until sunrise to rescue his sister. Otherwise, he and Anne won't be able to return to Earth forever. Sandman searches for clues and finds a chunk of moon rock. Based on this, Sandman suspects that Anne and the little stars were taken to the moon by the kidnapper. Using his magic, Sandman creates a sleigh to take them to the moon. Unfortunately, they can't go to the moon without permission. So Sandman takes Peter and Zoom to the castle in the clouds to get approval from Night Fairy, who is hosting a dinner party with other fairies. To attend the event, they must win a sleigh race in the Milky Way area. Sandman and the others prepare to compete against other sleighs also trying to join the dinner party. Meanwhile, the dinner has already begun, and from a distance, Milky Way Man introduces the guests, including Storm Giant, Rainy Robin, Lightning Witch, Henry Hale, and Mother Frost. Shortly after, the sleigh race begins with Sandman's team initially falling behind. However, they speed up and overtake the other sleighs, eventually taking the lead. As they near the finish line, Sandman suddenly falls asleep due to his narcolepsy, leaving Peter to take over the reins. Zoom, frightened, pretends to be dead again, leaving Peter confused as he doesn't know how to steer the sleigh. Despite Peter's efforts to maintain their lead, another sleigh overtakes them, resulting in their loss. Not long after, Sandman wakes up again and receives a scolding from Peter, who blames him for their loss. Frustrated, Peter decides to search for and on his own, but Sandman and Zoom follow him as he heads to meet Night Fairy. The three of them walk toward the gate, where they are confronted by two palace guards who forbid them from entering. Peter then takes Sandman's magic powder and throws it at one of the guards, giving Peter and the others a chance to break into the palace. Unable to pass through the palace door, they search for another way in via the floating cliffs in the sky. Reaching the palace cliffs, Peter and the others have to climb tree roots, which terrifies Zoom due to his fear of heights. Peter then reminds Zoom that he is an insect that can fly, prompting Zoom to finally choose to fly. Moments later, Peter, Sandman, and Zoom are on the palace roof, observing Night Fairy's dinner party. Unfortunately, Zoom makes a blunder, causing Peter and the others to fall into a soup bowl being eaten by the fairies. At that moment, Storm Giant is delighted to have human meat, while Lightning Witch sees Peter and the others as intruders and prepares to eliminate them. Peter then seizes the opportunity to speak to Night Fairy about his intention to go to the moon and rescue his little sister. Touched by Peter's words, Night Fairy decides to help Peter and the others by summoning a giant polar bear to take them to the moon. Meanwhile, Anne and the little stars are taken by a large figure named Moon Man to a moon mine where the little girls would be forced to make cannonballs. At that moment, Moon Man's henchmen order Anne and her friends to work quickly, despite the little stars beginning to fade as their energy depletes. And then comes up with an idea to escape from Moon Man's henchmen by suggesting that the little stars all ask to go to the bathroom together. As a result, the production of cannonballs at the factory becomes chaotic. At the same time, Anne and the others, who are running out of the factory, are confronted by a pack of fierce moon dogs. Cleverly, the little girls manage to outsmart the dogs before running away from the factory. During their escape, Anne falls into a hole that leads her to the place where Moon Man stores his cannon weapons. Shortly after, Lightning Witch arrives to meet Moon Man, who is her lover. Unexpectedly, the two have long had a romantic relationship, with Lightning Witch secretly acting as his spy in the Cloud Palace. At that moment, Lightning Witch warns Moon Man that a human is coming to save Anne. However, Moonman does not care as he is focused on preparing his cannon to attack Night Fairy's palace so he can conquer the palace and rule the universe. Moonman then asks Lightning Witch to return to the palace, but shortly after leaving, she comes back to inform him that and has caused chaos in the factory. Without hesitation, Moonman rushes to check it out himself. Meanwhile, and meets Zoamzaman's wife, who is still alive and imprisoned on the moon. Switching to Peter and the others, who are preparing to travel to the moon using the giant polar bear, Mother Frost then gives Peter a charm pouch, saying he can use it in desperate situations. On the moon, and in the little stars are recaptured by Moonman, who seeks to find the one responsible for the chaos. When and is about to confess, one of the little stars pretends to be her. Not fully convinced, Moonman tricks the little girls by pretending to leave and then calling out N's name. Innocently, and responds, leading Moonman to imprison her along with Zoamzaman's wife. Returning to Peter and his group who have now arrived on the moon, Peter, stepping on the moon for the first time, feels happy and wishes his father were with him. After bidding farewell to the bear, Peter and the others focus on finding and, unbeknownst to them, Moonman has been watching their arrival from afar and orders his henchmen to capture the intruders. Meanwhile, Peter and his companions continue their journey towards Moon Mountain where and is imprisoned, until they come across an abandoned spaceship. Suddenly, they are attacked by the barking moon dogs, but fortunately, they manage to get inside the spaceship to avoid the attack. Realizing the danger they are in, Zoomzaemon begins to lose hope of rescuing his wife. Peter tries to encourage him until all three regain their determination to continue their rescue mission. Luckily, they find a four-wheeled vehicle near the spaceship, which they use to head towards Moon Mountain. Despite having trouble driving the vehicle, Peter and his friends manage to land it at the entrance of the moon prison. Zoomzaemon is overjoyed to be reunited with his wife, and Peter quickly urges and the others to escape. At that moment, and asks Peter to stop Moonman from attacking Night Fairy's palace before they return home. Peter agrees, and they all rush to Moonman's cannon location. At the same time, Moonman's henchmen spot Peter and the others, so his forces are deployed to capture the intruders. Peter attempts to use the charm pouch given to him, but Storm Giant is busy playing bowling. Fortunately, other fairies come to help Peter stop Moonman. Rainy Robin jumps into the cannon, which is then fired at the palace, crashing down on Night Fairy, who becomes furious with Moonman's actions. Meanwhile, Moonman prepares a second cannonball to be fired at Night Fairy's palace, just as Peter climbs onto the cannon's control device to stop Moonman's actions. When Moonman notices, he invites Peter to join forces to destroy Night Fairy's palace, promising to share his power with him once they have conquered the entire universe, instead of with Lightning Witch, whom he has been using. Unbeknownst to him, Lightning Witch overhears this and becomes furious, attacking Moonman. At the same time, the cannon is fired, but fortunately, the shot misses Night Fairy's palace after Peter manages to change the target. At the same time, the enraged Night Fairy immediately came to the moon and banished Moonman and his henchmen to Mars. Night Fairy then thanks Peter and Anne for saving her palace. To punish Lightning Witch for her betrayal, Night Fairy strips her of her powers. Before leaving, Lightning Witch gives Peter and an amulet that will protect them. Additionally, Night Fairy restores Zoamzaman's arm and returns the sacred tree, the insect's home, to Earth. Once everything is settled, Sandman puts Peter, Anne, and the Zoomzaemon couple to sleep. The next morning, Peter and Anne wake up in their room. Seeing the amulet from Lightning Witch and the arrival of Zoomzaemon, the siblings realize their journey to the moon was not a dream. At the end of the animation, Peter and Anne head to school and are once again confronted by the bully. Peter decides to use the amulet given by Lightning Witch, which produces lightning that strikes the bully, causing him to run away in fear of the mysterious lightning attack. Moral lesson from the story: sometimes, sharing a room with a sibling can lead to magical adventures, like flying to the moon to save insects. So, don't be grumpy about room arrangements. You might miss out on becoming an intergalactic hero.